All right. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Trent Dungey. I am the president of the Association of Student Athletes, for ASA for short. I'm also a junior on the Life University swim team. And so I'd like to say welcome to the More Than an Athlete Mental Health and Wellness panel. I'm pleased that you're all here with me. We have Vincent Hinton, who is the Director of Counseling, Karlyn Edgar, who is the Life University Faculty in Psychology. We have Marina Pechonkina, I hope pronounced that right, current women's lacrosse student athlete and the ASA treasurer. And also we have Dalton Bailey, which is Life University men's wrestling alumni. All right. Thank you all for being here. And before we get started, is there anything you would like to add about your background?
Well, one thing I'm gonna brag on myself here for a minute, but in addition to being a faculty member at Life, I also have coached volleyball for coming up on decades, as well as being a player myself, and have coached everything from 12-year-olds to 22-year-olds. So a whole lot of age range in there as well.
That's great. Great.
I just wanted to share a little bit about my education for that everyone. I am a licensed therapist. I'm licensed in both Alabama and Georgia. I'm holding my master's degree as well as my EDS in the area of counseling. And I also have the life coach credential. That's something very new that's happened within the past year. Just a way to kind of add to my resume, if you will, but then also learning some different tools and techniques that may be beneficial for our students or those that I work with in the community also.
Great. Anyone else? All right. Okay, so for today's panel, we're just going to start with definitions of mental health and mental wellness. So mental health is a person's condition with regard to their psychological and emotional well-being, where mental wellness is when one's mind is in order and functioning to their best interest. So for our first question, do these two definitions match your personal understanding of mental wealth and health? Why or why not? So yeah, anyone can jump in.
I'm really speaking to mental health, mental well-being, and I also like to throw in mental illness, just so that we can differentiate and being mindful that illness is something that is diagnosed. And so sometimes you may hear people say, oh, I've been diagnosed with depression, or I've been diagnosed with ADHD, or I've been diagnosed with something. So we know that there's been a barrier test that someone has provided, and they came to that conclusion. And I think mental well-being is just your state of being, your mindset. It's how you may view life and having the tools and techniques to be able to stay within that frame. You know, it's different for everybody. Earlier today, I had a conversation with someone about self-care, and they're just learning how to incorporate self-care as a part of their mental wellness or mental being, state of being. And it's something that said they never really thought about being a part of something that's intentional with meaning, purpose, and value for their life, because they know that it's important, not only now, but creating a pattern that will be lifelong when you think about self-care.
And to kind of piggyback off of that, I really like that Vincent brought in, excuse me, the idea of mental illness, because I think there's also, when you talk about mental illness, mental health, and and psychological well-being, a lot of times those kind of get put in different categories of mental illness being that diagnosed something is wrong with you. Where I think a lot of times, unfortunately, mental health kind of gets categorized as just there's nothing wrong, so you're okay. right? And so it's not a excelling, and it's not a growth, it's just kind of a maintaining a status quo, like you're just kind of floating. Where I think often when you think about psychological well-being, that is kind of, as Vincent was saying, that self-care of taking those steps to better your mental well-being, that it's not just that something, a absence of illness that makes you well, but rather a taking steps to, I'm going to say to make yourself better, but rather to reinforce the strengths you have and potentially to shore up things that may be challenges for you in the future.
Mhm. Absolutely.
I think that those were great additions. Also, to Vincent and Karlyn, what led you to pursue careers related to mental wealth and health and wellness?
So
Vincent?
I'll share with you, and being fully transparent, I actually wanted to be a dentist. And so a part of the process of being a dentist is you had to take, in addition to all of the science, you had to take like human growth and development. You had to take personality. So there were several psychology courses that was coupled with the science courses as a part of the curriculum moving in that direction. So I did a couple of things. One, I truly believe if you're passionate about a particular career, that you should do some community service, volunteer work in that area just to see if it's something you want to do. But while taking the science courses and the psychology courses, I also volunteered in my dentist's office. And I came to realize that I love being around people. I'm passionate about working with people. But the only communication that would really happen as it relates to that particular field would be just talking to someone at the very beginning, talking to them once they get out. And so for me, I made the decision that maybe that's not the path. And so I followed more of the psychology courses, which led to more of the counseling aspect. And so that's how I ended up here, having one path that I was following and realizing that it wasn't a good fit for me after doing some volunteer work, but still staying connected to the psychology courses that was a part of the process, and it led to graduate school in counseling.
So not completely dissimilar for me. I actually started college undecided and took a couple psych courses and fell in love with it. And decided I was going to be a psych major from there with no idea what I was actually going to do with that. Then decided I wanted to teach. And at the time I was at University of Florida. So you had the opportunity, you could work as a research assistant. So for a semester, I was a research assistant and discovered in being a research assistant that I did not enjoy doing research. That was not for me. But similar to Vincent's story, what I really enjoyed about it was getting to talk to the people who would come in to participate in the studies, and hearing their stories and hearing what's going on in their lives. So after I could comfortably say research wasn't for me, and I talked to a couple of people who were mentors for me, as well as actually seeking out some counseling myself around that time. It all kind of dovetailed nicely into this seeming like something I very much wanted to do. So I actually, similar to Vincent, have my master's in EDS and mental health counseling. I'm actually licensed still. And so followed that, thinking I was never going to teach again. Came to Life University as a counselor, actually, and taught a couple courses, and then fell in love with teaching. So I've kind of done a few little curves along the way. So I kind of followed that similar path of just kind of stumbling into things while discovering other things that weren't the right fit for me at the same time.
And I think that's what's so great about like career exploration is that discovery aspect of what's important for you, and what you enjoy and what becomes a passion. Just like Karlyn, prior to coming to Life University, I was on the teaching side. And so truly enjoyed that. But the one thing that's a theme for me is that I was constantly working with students. And so that's the passion and love for me.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. You know, it's finding your passion in life that really drives you. Sorry about any background noise. They're busy weed whacking outside my apartment. But yeah. Anyway, moving on. To Dalton. Was mental health wellness a priority for you while you were actively competing?
Hey, how's it going? Dalton Bailey. I graduated 2018. I actually helped coach the men's wrestling right now. But when I was competing, not for me necessarily. I guess it might have been the way that I was raised. My dad just told me to do it, so I did it. And I never really had that issue, but I noticed maybe teammates and stuff that might have had that. At that time, I probably didn't really know how to approach that issue maybe. So, I mean, I kind of just steered clear of that because I didn't know really how to handle it. But I actually did become a police officer after I graduated for a little while and worked with people like that. And you had to learn how to approach those certain situations. You can't really match, like if they're upset or angry or mad, you can't really match their energy to you gotta like try to get below them to where they can say what needs to be said and get them the help that they need. Can't match that energy with violence because I don't really know how to help them when they do that. So that's really all I got. I've never really experienced it for myself with wrestling, but I know other people might have had that issue.
Yeah, I know. With swimming, you know, with it being an individual sport, it's about, when it comes to racing, it's about 90% mental. You know, if you have something a little off, you know, that can throw your whole race off. With swimming, it's about, you know, the split seconds. If my turns are off, you know, okay, I've put on half a second, so I have to 100% actually be in that right mental state. But Marina, do you feel that mental health and wellness is more of a priority to you now than it was when you were in high school? Why or why not?
Um, Personally, I think just being so busy with my sport, lacrosse, I completely forget to focus on my health personally. And I also work a job and school, but I think it should be more important, and I think that I should focus on my mental health more and actually make time for it. But I'm so busy trying to like get everything done that I don't prioritize it the way I should.
It's great. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I've, like Vincent mentioned earlier, recently I've been trying to incorporate more kind of like self-care into my routine, you know, because recently I've been doing, you know, like 50 hours a week or more with practice and school and everything I do. So, you know, it can get a little crazy sometimes, and you know, you forget the important things. But yeah, again to Mr. Hinton and Karlyn. Oh no, this is just a general question to anyone. Would you say mental wellness is the same as happiness?
I would actually argue, and Vincent, I'd be curious your thoughts on this too. I would actually argue that if you are doing mental wellness right, it is actually not always a pleasant thing. Talking from kind of a counselor perspective and also kind of wrapping in some of that athletic experience, mental wellness is not just running around smiling all the time. As a matter of fact, I'll be very honest, as a counselor, when people do that, that's like an alarm bell for me of like, I need to check on that person. Something's wrong, right? Like nobody's happy all the time like that. And that's normal. And it should be that way. So I think there's this misperception that if you're doing well, that means you're always happy, always smiling, where sometimes doing well means acknowledging that I'm struggling. And I mean, I think especially with the last year that so many of us have had, there's a lot of pressure to be okay. In a situation that I think arguably no one should really be okay with in some ways, right? Like just the added struggle and the added stresses of life make things harder there. And so I would actually argue that if you're really, I'm going to say, addressing your struggles, there is a little bit of kind of, in a healthy way, wading into the darkness of that with the recognition of how to get to the other side of it. And that's not fun. As a matter of fact, like I know one of the misconceptions I often had to deal with people who came to counseling is a lot of times you actually kind of feel worse when you first start counseling than you did before, because you start talking about things that you've probably long since buried, right? And found ways of coping with. So I would actually argue they really aren't and shouldn't be considered the same things.
Yeah, I would agree with you as well. You know, for me, it's always about this level of awareness. And it's one to acknowledge that you're experiencing something that's different. And you may not know how to label what that different thing may be, but you just know that it's something different. And I think it starts there. And I think that you have moments throughout the process of getting to whatever the goal may be, because, you know, like the goal is going to change because you're going to have different experiences along the way. It's kind of like when you're starting year one, being a part of a team sport. And then year two, it's going to be different because there's going to be different players that's a part of that group setting. And all of the dynamics are going to be different. It doesn't change the fact that you still have whatever your experience may be that's different, but you're personally working on getting to the other side of that, that could allow for happy moments, but may not always be happy every day. Because it takes work if you truly acknowledge what those things are that you want to work on. And it could be as simple as being a far more effective communicator. And I'll give you an example. One of the things that I love to talk about when I speak on healthy relationships is learning your language. And for some people, quality time for me is important, but I may not always be the most effective communicator when it comes to someone that needs to hear things like, oh, you look really nice today, or I love that blouse or that shirt that you're wearing. That's what they need to hear. And so for me, I have to work really hard to make sure if that's someone that's in my circle that I value and appreciate, that I give them what they need so that our relationship, however we label that, is one that they identify as having meaning, intent, and purpose for them. The same thing with your teammates, whoever the team captain may be. You have a really challenging job to maintain some level of mental well-being because everyone is looking to you to be that lead and support. And so sometimes you have to step back and say, am I taking care of myself so that I can be at my optimal best to not may need minutes time after practice, 5 minutes before practice, just to share something with you. So I think it's important to have as many tools in your toolbox so that when it's game time, that you're mentally stable and ready to go out and perform to the best of your ability. So I think that there's a distinct difference between the two. But I truly believe that you'll have happy moments. But I'm like Karlyn, if you're happy all the time, that's a red flag that you're probably disguising, using that as a way to cope through whatever experience. And once we get beyond that layer, then we can start the work, which is somewhat can be difficult at times.
Yeah, I 100% agree with both of you. I think, you know, really through the media and our everyday lives, you know, people really romanticize the whole of life, you know, how, you know, like we're supposed to be happy all the time, and your relationship is supposed to be, you know, a field of roses every day, you know, but that's not life. You know, it's about accepting the balance and appreciating the good moments, the happy moments, and understanding that, you know, you can't have happiness without the pain and the downfalls in life. You know, that's what makes it worth it. You know, so it's, you know, it's all about the balance and kind of like going with the flow of life and adapting as you go.
And Trent, I think you bring up a very valid point as it relates to balance. And again, that's going to look different for everybody. But it's important when you're able to find that balance and what works well for you, because some tools in your toolbox may not work well for you, but it may work well for another teammate. And so sometimes the mere fact that you may say, hey, tried this before, and this is something that was helpful for me, it may be helpful for you. And then two, that particular tool may be the best tool that you're using at that time. And then you recognize that I just need a different tool to kind of tweak it a little bit because now I'm experiencing something else. And so you're constantly adding another layer or reaching for a different tool to help you with whatever the new experience may be. But balance is key. It's important.
Yeah.
Well, and I also want to kind of bring up Vincent's earlier point too, of especially for anyone, but especially for athletes who might be in a leadership position on their team. But again, I would argue for anybody, because arguably anybody is a leader on a team at any different point, right? We all have different strengths that lead us to have leadership opportunities at different times. But I think it's really important for people who want to be in that position to be okay with modeling how to not be okay. And what I mean by that is not that you need to go curl up in a corner and cry all the time. That's not necessarily being okay either. But how do you model that I'm struggling, but I'm going to use the tools like Vincent talked about? You know, how am I going to make sure that I'm learning new tools? How am I going to make sure that I'm practicing them so that when I need them, they're ready? Because I think that's the other thing, and it hasn't really been mentioned yet, but just to kind of bring it up, because I think this is something athletes often overlook and people overlook. Just like an athlete needs to go to practice to get better and to maintain their skills, right? I mean, anybody who's been an athlete has had to do drills or gone through practices that were just mind-boggling boring because you were doing basic skills and maintaining that ability. And to a degree, not that boring is the right adjective for it, but self-care is not dissimilar. You have to practice it. You have to, kind of to your point, Trent, you have to make it part of your routine, because if you don't practice something like meditation, if you don't practice something like progressive muscle relaxation or visualization, it's not going to be a tool you can use when you need it, right? You have to flex those muscles. You have to practice those just like you would any other skill in athletics. So I think that's also something that's really important to kind of talk about here, is that it's not just when you're in a bad time you need tools. You need tools and you need to practice your tools even when things are going great. And really learn how to keep those, I'm going to say, those good times kind of rolling in that balance as much as you can.
Yeah, that's great. It's all about utilizing your tools, especially as an athlete. You know, like as I mentioned, there's like the romanticization of it. You know, when you're thinking about your sport, about what you want to accomplish, you know, you're visualizing all the glory and guts of it. You know, winning that gold medal, like in swimming. You know, but when it comes to practice every day, 4 hours, sometimes 6 hours a day, you know, that's when you have to utilize those tools and get through it. But something I do in swimming, a big thing in swimming is rituals. We always have our rituals before our races. You know, some people have some crazy rituals, but for me, nothing too crazy. I just you know, I stretch before my race. You know, I have my race suits on. I like to put, some swimmers like to put their cap and goggles on like right before their race, but for me, I like to put my cap and goggles on like 20 minutes before my race, because I don't want to be worrying about my cap and goggles that shortly before the race, you know, in case my goggles break or something. And then right before the race, I don't know why I do this, but I love to jump as high as I can before I race. I don't know, maybe like it simulates the same motion as jumping off the block, you know, but that's my ritual. You know, I just jump on the spots a lot. And so my question goes out to the athletes. Do you have any go-to rituals or practices that you make use of to make sure you're in the best state of mind?
I'll go first. For wrestling, I would always like to, well, we're always in a cold gym normally, and then your body needs to be warm, so my hands are always cold. So I always put my hands on my face until they warm up right before I wrestle. I don't know why, it called me, I guess. And then I pull up my singlet, put my shirt back on, put my shorts off, and then wait for about 5 minutes until I'm about to wrestle. And then I do it again, and then I go straight out there and wrestle. But that was really the only ritual I had. But some guys on the team, they have to fold their clothes a certain way, put it in a certain pile, carry it, put it in a certain spot, everything. They do everything the same. So, yeah, rituals are definitely something that people do. But that was mine.
I personally don't have a ritual, and I just noticed that. I guess as a team, we just all kind of jam out in the locker room before, but nothing. I don't do anything personally by myself.
Yeah, I guess it's a little different when it comes to individual versus team sports. You have more team rituals or team traditions. All right, for my next question, how important are the friends you keep in your circle to your mental health and well-being? Within that circle, how do you identify the positive contributors and the negative contributors?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is that we're all made for relationships. But how do we define those relationships? We may have relationships that are peer to peer. We may have relationships that are siblings, family related. We may have relationships because we're on a team together. We have relationships because we're part of community organizations, or we may have relationships because this is someone that I've been taking a class with over a period of time. And I think through those relationships, we may not always articulate the benefits to the other person, like, oh, I appreciate the fact that you're always there for me, or I appreciate the fact that you take time out to study with me. But I think over a period of time, my experience has been is that you recognize what's important to you. And we tend to pour into each other so that we both find value, or even if it's a team, find value in what we're receiving from either our teammates or whomever we may identify as being that friend, that go-to person. And I think we all have friends for different reasons. Being fully transparent, I have two really dear friends, and I have no sisters, but both of them are like sisters to me. And when I need someone to be very nurturing in their response, I'll call this particular friend because they'll listen differently and they'll respond differently. Now, when I need a friend to be very firm, don't sugarcoat, tell it like it is, I'll call the other friend because they listen differently as well. But they always respond in a way that positions me to say, okay, especially if it's a situation I'm going through, how am I going to handle this situation? Both very valid and worthy of the experience, but it's the longevity. And have we had our ups and downs in friendships? In our friendship, absolutely. Have we been upset with each other? Absolutely. Do we come back and talk about it and what we may have said that may have caused harm to the other person? Absolutely. But we work through it. And I think it's just the commitment to those relationships that make them worthwhile and meaningful. But from my experience, it's always different.
Well, and I think when you're looking at positive to negative relationships, there's understanding, kind of like Vincent was saying, like what relationships benefit you or what you may need in a situation and who to reach out to in those moments, right? Like if you're a student and you have somebody who helps you study, that's not going to be the friend you call when you want to go out and have dinner and relax and chill, right? Like, I mean, maybe, but maybe not. And if you have a big test the next day, you probably shouldn't call the friend who wants to go out and have dinner and chill, right? You probably need to call the friend who's going to study with you. But I also think one of the special struggles athletes can often have is, as Vincent was kind of talking about the team, like sometimes there aren't optional relationships. You're on a team with this person, and especially if it's a team sport, but I would even argue for an individual sport like swimming, like you are around those people a lot and they're going to influence you. And so I think some is recognizing how to have the healthy boundaries of kind of knowing when enough is enough. But even more than boundaries, and part of boundaries, I would say, is developing the communication skills, developing your communication skills so that you can address issues before they become a blow up problem, or so that you can help yourself hold the boundaries that you want to hold in a healthy, good way. One of the struggles I've seen on a lot of teams is, and I think it's a human nature issue, I'll speak for myself, it's a battle I have to overcome a lot, is how easy it gets to bottle up when I'm annoyed or I'm angry or something that somebody is doing is hurtful to me. But there's only so much you can bottle up, right? It's kind of like when you shake the Coke bottle, eventually the lid comes off and it's a mess. So can you develop the communication skills so that, you know, this is not the Coke bottle exploding all over everyone and it becomes a huge toxic situation, but rather, can I address it with the individual and try to talk to them? And one of the things that I think is really hard with communication skills is you can be the best communicator in the face of the planet, right? You can have all the great words and all the listening skills, but you also have to come with a level of grace. Sorry, there is Duplo's my 3-year-old in the background, so I apologize. But you also have to come with a certain amount of grace for the other people in the communication in the circle, because not everyone is comfortable with communication. And that's one of the big struggles I think a lot of people have is, if I want to communicate with you, but you don't want to communicate back, or you're struggling, we don't really give them grace. We kind of want to yank them and drag them along with us. And that's not really healthy either. And that's the situation. We're also knowing how to, do you have a coach, or do you have another friend or somebody who can also help you step in to moderate some of those situations, right? Somebody who you can trust. So I think there's a level of communication and grace that has to go with even relationships that you don't want to keep necessarily, but maybe you have to for some reason. You know, and even as for, you know, student athletes, I'm sure there's faculty members who you feel that way about, right? Like it's there in all facets of our lives. So some of it's learning how to put up the boundaries, some of it's learning how to give grace, and some of it's learning how to communicate.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think sometimes in teams, there are some necessary relationships you have to maintain. Someone you might not necessarily get along with. For example, in a team sport, there may be someone that's in a position that you work with a lot. You know, for example, in rugby, you might be in the tight row together, you know, you literally bind together in the scrum, you know, but you might have a, you know, serious issues with the person right next to you. But, you know, it's about using all of those tools, as Karlyn said. All right, and to Vincent and Karlyn, what would you say are some markers of mental wellness?
So what I would look at for markers of mental wellness is, and I'm probably not even going to hit on most of them because there's tons of facets to this. But one I would look at is somebody who can be appropriately introspective, because there's a balanced introspection, right? Like somebody who can look at themselves, their behaviors, and can you be okay with the person you are, right? Can you meet yourself where you are? We talk a lot about meeting people where they are, but I don't think we talk enough as a society or as a culture about meeting yourself where you are. And if you think about even how to change, right? Like let's even assume you take that good introspective look at yourself. There's things you don't like. There's things you want to change. You can't change something you don't accept as a part of yourself. And so can you still love yourself and take care of yourself for who you are? Like that would be kind of my number one thing to look at. Of we're all flawed, right? Whether you're flawed as a human being, because you all are, whether you have weaknesses as an athlete, because every athlete does. Can you accept those things about yourself and still fundamentally be okay? And to me, that's kind of the first marker of, okay, this is a person who can handle the struggle. Because think about even in terms of practice or competition, every athlete's going to have a bad day. I'm sure anyone who's ever been in a competition for anything knows what it feels like to have that bad day. And so one of the big struggles is if you can't accept that your bad days are there, and you instead take those as a marker of, I'm a failure, I'm awful, insert terrible, bad self-talk here, you're not going to be able to bounce back. One of the biggest things that I look for in coaching or anything, even when I'm looking at athletes, is what do they do after a mistake, right? I don't care if you have a perfect practice. I'm actually not that impressed that you're in a good mood at the end of that, right? Like, that's easy. What I look for is when you make that first mistake, do you pound your fist on the floor? Do you snap at your teammate who tried to pick you up? Do you do you just cave in on yourself, right? Or what do you do on the day where you're practicing? And God knows I've had plenty of days. And what do you do on the days where literally nothing you do goes right? That you for the life of you can't do the most basic thing. And how can you watch that individual? And when I see somebody who can be frustrated but still fundamentally okay, like, that's a mentally tough person. That's somebody who I'd say has a fair amount of health there. But yeah, there's a lot of pieces to it.
The first thing that comes to mind for me is just a level of awareness. And like Karlyn said, for us, our job is to meet you where you are, identify the journey or the path where we're going for this time frame, make sure that it's realistic, make sure that we're setting you up for success, and then talk about what that process is like. It's kind of like, I think maybe a team sport would be. You're working on a play, and you may say, well, you know what, I don't know if this play is going to be the most effective. And so you may have to realize that you have to do something slightly different, and then be okay with what that different may look like, even if it means that there may be another player that needs to step into your spot, or if it means that you may not be the go-to person to make the point for the team. And be comfortable with whatever that decision is. For me, it's always about, I know you guys may look at recovery different, but I like the way Karlyn kind of explained it, is that what are you doing in the midst of this when it's time to recover from whatever that situation was? How are you bouncing back? How are you assessing whatever the situation may be so that you can improve and grow and be a better version of yourself? There's so many different areas we could probably tap into, but that's kind of what comes to mind for me. And then I'm mindful of a quote. I don't know where I picked the quote up. I'm not sure if it's owned by anyone in particular, but I remember reading a quote a long time ago that change will occur when a commitment is made. And for me, that's so important in thinking about what commitment am I making to my mental health? What commitment am I making to academics? What commitment am I making to friendships? What commitment am I making towards career? And then having the tools and resources to make sure that I'm mentally capable of meeting whatever those things may be, and having the good balance between it all. I hope that helps a little bit, kind of explaining it. We probably could go multiple areas, but.
Well, and one more thing I kind of wanted to add, as I was kind of thinking about what you were saying, Vincent, too, is kind of the idea of in that recovery of how do you, in recovering from setbacks, one thing I want to emphasize is that recovering from setbacks doesn't also mean that you just ignore it and you just move on, right? The best athletes know, the strongest, mentally strongest athletes know, how do I learn from my mistake and then let it go? Right? How do I take what I need from this setback? Because that's also an important thing I think we need to acknowledge, is that there's something to be learned from those situations. There's something to be gained. It's just knowing how to appropriately put it into context so that it doesn't ruin you for the rest of the day or even the next 5 minutes, right? So that's just kind of one thing I wanted to add.
Yeah, I like when you guys spoke about setting realistic goals in swimming. That's a really big thing, you can dream about going to the Olympics all day, but first you need to qualify for the Olympic qualifiers. In 2016, I qualified and swam in the Olympic qualifiers in South Africa, and then on the second day, I was in the warm-up pool, and I realized that I got diagnosed and I had a severe chest infection. So obviously I couldn't swim. But yeah, you know, it's all about realistic goals, and that has a huge impact on your mental state. You know, if you're saying something unrealistic and like, you know, after such a long time you're still not getting there, you know, it does damage. But yeah, moving on. Marina, if you feel, do you ever feel that you're ever off, and what do you do about that?
When you say off, what do you mean? Like off, like sad or not feeling great, or what do you mean by off?
Yeah, I would say like anything that's, you know, that's not at your like optimum, you know, mental state, you know, regarding, you know, like sport and school, you know, if you're, you know, any kind of like challenges like mentally, or you're just, you know, feeling down, or you're feeling off athletically or something.
Me personally, I try to think of the bigger picture and to keep going, like think of why am I doing this? Why am I here? And it kind of drives me to be like, I know why I'm here. I want to do this so I can do this in the future. Like right now, like this is going to be beneficial for my career, going to school in the future. So I guess just it keeps me motivated. You have to stay motivated.
That's great. I like the bigger picture thinking. Dalton, what do you wish you would have done differently when you've struggled in the past, and has that changed the way that you deal with tough times today?
Yeah, I mean, with if I could change something, I guess when obviously our sport involves with like weight, you gotta like manage your weight and get down and stuff. So I guess one big thing I could have done is listen to my coach by eating healthier. I thought I could eat what I wanted because I was 20 years old. And I could eat what I want, work out twice a day, 3 times a day, and I'd still perform. But it definitely didn't get me to where I could be. So if I could change the way I eat, which I think would help with my mental state of I just living a healthier life, I guess, might have helped me a lot. So I think eating would definitely have to be something I would change if I could go back.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, nutrition is a big thing, and you know, it's the difference whether you can drive that last part of practice or not, you know, with your full energy. Okay, and as we're drawing to a close, I'm gonna ask the panel if you guys have any final questions.
I just wanted to ask all of you, as current students, as alumni, what can we do from a faculty staff standpoint to better support our students on campus, and more specifically our student athletes?
All right.
Go ahead. Okay. I know you talk about meditating after practice and stuff like that. As a wrestling team, we actually do that. Some days, it's like once, maybe every other week, we do that at the end of our practices. In the main gym, we turn off the lights. I have the guys lay down after a hard practice, and our head coach actually talks them through like the perfect match, because we wrestle, so it's matches, and like imagine yourself in that national tournament, because it's something different that people don't actually take their time, take like 5 minutes out of their day to just relax, clear their minds. And I think that actually helps and works well. So as a faculty, I mean, I guess maybe we could push that for that to happen more, because when I was wrestling, we did that and it actually helped me. So I think that would be very good.
Yeah, I think like, you know, I know, Vincent, you mentioned doing meditation with a team like after one of their practices. That sounds great. And also, you know, if you were to come speak to sports teams, about, you know, like building up their mental state in regards to their sports, you know, like with swimming, it's all about building up your confidence, and you have to build it from the foundation up to make sure that, you know, it can't be taken away from you, because confidence is something you can't fake. I mean, you can fake it, you can fake it to your opponents and stuff, but you can't fake it to yourself. And like, for example, for me as a swimmer, like that would have a big impact on my race. If going to 200 butterfly, it's a grueling race, you know. And if I'm not confident, I'm like, oh no, like my stroke rate is down, you know, I'm not that fit, you know, it's gonna affect my confidence going in. So yeah. All right. Well, our time is up, so I'd like to thank you all for your time. And as a reminder, Mr. Hinton is with us in the athletics department every Tuesday morning from about at least 8:30 a.m. to 10:30, offering his company and services. You can also catch Professor Edgar with her next psychology courses, or helping you working with the interns right now. Also, you can see Marina on the lacrosse field, and also you can stop by and say hello to Dalton, who is now working with the men's wrestling as a coach. So yeah, just thank you guys. This was really great, informative, and educational. Yeah, maybe we can do this again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity just to share. And I always know if there's anything that we can do as faculty and staff, we're here to support and help.
Yeah, this was a great opportunity and I really appreciate it. So hopefully we can do it again.